All right, traders, welcome to today's recap. This is Christian from Tribeca Trade Group, and today is Thursday, the 6th. Let's go through a couple names that had earnings after the close. Some decent numbers came out of, these software plays have been really, really good. Not everyone, but I would say there's been some of them that have really kind of hit it to the upside. Okta, nice numbers. They had better than expected numbers for this quarter, and they also raised their guidance, which is always important. 96 to 97. That's a nice jump in estimates from 89. Five had some good numbers. They are all the way. Almost looks like the exact same chart. Went up to 123. So they continue to beat. A few other names that reported after the close. Broadcom, nice beat there. MRVL, which is now down on the day, their numbers were kind of mixed. You want to talk about a name that saw some crazy option activity for the same day, which again, I always kind of I try not to look at the option activity same day. It seems to be very noisy, but I mean they went after the options that expire for tomorrow. There was 21,000 of the 19 strike puts. There was also 21,000 of the 21 strike. 19 and 20 strike puts. Just a lot of premium bought to that, and the semis were hit pretty hard today. So overall, I think that's pretty good. I think Broadcom is the bigger company, so to see that one up may give a relief rally to the semi names. Micron certainly got crunched today on a negative analyst report out. I mean, down 10%, and it just shows how quickly this market is moving. Down 10%. I mean, that's a huge move on just an analyst report, and that happened basically in an hour. So just very quickly, this market seems to be moving, very quickly on news or on anything that's either upsetting. Things will really fall out pretty quickly. And, to me, it kind of tells me that things overall were a little bit too built up over the last week. Just to kind of round out the earnings names, who else? There was one, Palo Alto reported. I played this one. I have the 227.5, 232.5 call spread. Okta, I did not trade because I wanted to go long this name, but the implied move was just a little bit too big. I think it was around. I may still have it on my calculator. I think it was around 16 or 17%. From memory. So they were implying a big move, but it looks like they got it up to 69 bucks. So real nice move. By the way, we go over all the earnings plays. I use a lot of call spreads that helps me minimize the some of the big moves in implied volatility that these names are looking for, so you can participate. Like Palo Alto, for instance, which I think was implying about a 7% move. Let's see. I should have this stuff here. I don't know why I don't just bring up the earnings channel. We have this very nice and organized. Oh, it's a 12% move for Okta. Not that bad. Palo Alto was a 6.8% move. So nice move there, but a decent recovery for some of the stocks that really got beaten up. I really think that this is a rotation that we see time and time again. It is painful as it occurs, and then usually the buyers come back into the space. But as I mentioned yesterday, the tech space saw $2 billion of inflows last week. That's a bit too much, and a lot of times once stocks, I like to use the analogy of, for skiing. I'm a big skier. So when you get over the tips of your skis, bad things happen. I think tech got a little bit over the tips of its skis last week, and it comes back. I mean, notice that this happens from time to time, and then we always end up higher for the last couple years, right? Anytime, I mean, granted, the volatility has gotten a little bit bigger on some of these days, so it's a little bit more painful if you get caught on the wrong side, here to here, here to here. By the way, this purple line is the 50-day moving average. So, you could kind of sit and wait for your reversal day, but we did move decently off the lows. Notice, the other thing that I think helps traders is to realize that you don't have to jump in as soon as you see a red bar. Unless you're day trading and kind of looking for a reversal intraday. But if you're swing trading, notice that it takes a little bit of time, right? It's kind of a gradual recovery. It bases for a little bit, gives you some intraday moves. right in here, a couple inside days, and then boom, we recovered and end up going up. So, make sure the reason why I mention this, and again, this video is for information purposes only, but I always recommend going a little bit further out than weeklies if you're playing for a move. Give yourself enough time. It's okay spending a little bit, in my opinion, it's okay spending a little bit more money to make sure you're giving yourself enough time. It's the worst thing to be right, but not give yourself enough time, and the trade expires worthless. Just to kind of round out, because I know everybody looks at these names, Amazon I think is going to be, giving a pretty nice opportunity here. I know it's still kind of extended from where it was a month ago, but hey, whenever Amazon comes in, down about 3% over the last 2 days. So, I think that's a good opportunity in Amazon, and I still think holds up better than anything else. You could see we haven't even broke the 20-day moving average, which is the purple line. But if you look at names like Google, I kind of went off on Google yesterday for not showing up. They're down another 1.25%, another hammer bar. So we'll see how that goes for tomorrow. Maybe this name finally bounces. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 red bars in a row. We'll see. I think at this point I could probably draw a line in here, and we'll see if we get above that. But just like we did here, and then we moved up and out pretty quickly. Netflix did get an upgrade from RBC, but still looks a little bit challenged. It finished up on the day 1.5%, but kind of a ugly looking candle for the day. Facebook, there was some calls you can see to the left of my screen. I've got Facebook calls that went up today. A lot of these things being taken out, what's called VPOCs, Virgin Point of Controls. You could see this on the Qs too. This was sorry, not a VPOC, but on the 1 hour. Really some good levels off of the 1 hour for the Qs. It did. Sorry, I'm getting my names confused a little bit. But yeah, you could see I mentioned this. I tweeted this out once we were kind of approaching it. And I had bought some puts. I covered them very quickly for a scratch, and then once I saw us taking another leg lower, I actually bought some more puts, and I made some money on this dive, and I unwound it using my technicals, which right in here, 181, a perfect tag. So that could be another thing if you want to, if you want to be long in the Qs, I would watch a 181 stop. If it breaks back below that VPOC, I don't want to be in it. But again, a lot of times we search these things out, especially once we're below value, which is on the hour. The other one that I was thinking of was Amazon. That actually did find support right at that bottom of value, 1936. If it breaks below 1936, watch out for this guy. This does not really become active unless you break below 1936, so keep an eye on that. If it happens to do that, I would think that this will be a really good buying opportunity in here. So I think it's one to watch if you're not in Amazon. Secretly, I wouldn't mind if it goes down to 1892. I think that would be a great place to put on a hefty little trade for Amazon. Okay, so that's the popular names that everybody likes to go over. What did I do today? I bought some Salesforce. I talked about that trade that went up yesterday. So I did go ahead and buy some Salesforce on, and that trade is up already. I've been waiting to get into Salesforce and that big call order. Again, just so that you know, whenever I talk about call flow, it's just an idea for me. I know it creates momentum, but there are so many trades. I hate to go over this, but I do like to point out how bad some of the activity has been in terms of option flow. I could give you a couple examples, right? So again, Salesforce I've been trying to get into, or thinking about getting into since they reported earnings. I think they reported a good quarter, but they ran up a little bit. So a dip is where I want to get involved in Salesforce. So there was calls that went up in February yesterday, but again, that's not going to really, that's interesting to me. But that's all it is to me, right? I mean, because look at some of these names that we've seen repeat call activity in. Win has been one. If you followed any of this option activity, you've been crushed. So again, the reason why I point this out is so that you can learn. So just because you see repeat activity, and aggressive activity, it doesn't mean really it's going to work. And people, I think, who put out option flow all day long, I encourage them to put out all the ones that have lost. Look at Yandex. A couple weeks ago, we saw repeat and repeat and repeat calls being bought. And look at this thing. Now, it did hit a VPOC today. So, if that could also be your angle, is to maybe get in much cheaper than, all these guys who are buying calls. Micron is a great one too. Just because Tepper is in this, it doesn't mean Tepper is going to be right. And that's another one where we've seen some calls. This one I got dinged on today because I did play Micron and I did take targets in this one, but I lost on this big thing. Yesterday was a bad move yesterday. And, I was kind of 50-50 on whether I should hold on to it. And it did break the 200-day moving average. And sometimes when you kind of leave it to chance a little bit and are not super disciplined, sometimes this happens, down 10%. So pretty ugly. I did not add to my position today because you have this VPOC down here at 42. I may look to add to it down there. I'm in some November calls in that one. But again, the other thing that you could do with some of these names, if you're following option activity, is don't, keep the position size the same as your own picks. I tell you, I have had much better picks than some of the flow that we've seen in option activity. It's been atrocious. And again, what this means is to learn from it. If all of this call activity is so bad in terms of what we see on the tape, discount that in terms of what you want to play. And again, there's some winners in option activity, but it's really not any more significant than throwing a dart, in my opinion. There just hasn't been much of an edge there. All right, so what has been super, super nice? Low volatility equities. So I sent this out. I sent it out this morning because I don't think people are really paying attention to this. So people think low volatility equities. There's two ETFs. There's one called minimum volatility and there's one called low volatility. Look at these things go. So sometimes you may think, oh, maybe it's just utilities that are in here. There are some utilities in here, but if you look at USMV, for example, and just to see what's in here. And I'll just wait for this to come up. There we go. Allocations. So you can see there are some utilities, 7.8%, but you got REITs. Believe it or not, software names are in here. Insurance names are in here. Healthcare. It's pretty diverse, right? You don't have anything that's that big in it. But, so, it's just a good example to kind of look at some other things besides, and I know I led off with the FANG names, but, looking at some other areas of the market, I mean, this has been a beast. It's been an absolute beast. I traded J&J today, just kind of looking for something in this space that's been having the momentum to it. Nice move today, and the options are pretty cheap in J&J, which did see a tiny bit of call buying today, very, very lightly, which really did not influence my decision of going into J&J. But I'll bring up the trades blotter so you could see exactly what I do or what I did today. Let's see, there we go. So yeah, in Johnson & Johnson, October 148 calls. So this was a nice little trade. I wasn't looking for this to be a day trade, but it worked out pretty well. It had a target at 168, which is a little bit more than a 10% profit target, and then took another one at 185. So that's a nice little trade. So you think of J&J only up what, 75 basis points? But the options are cheap, right? It's not like playing Amazon in options. The implied volatility is a lot easier to deal with. I also played Visa. Visa was a name that I'm watching because whenever Visa dips, it's been a pretty good place to buy, and it didn't go down enough from where I really thought it would be attractive. So I put on a really cheap play for this. And it worked very well today. So that's Visa. And, again, I played this one just as a day trade because, I think Visa could actually come in a little bit more. Same thing, I would love to get PayPal a little bit cheaper. Let's just go to the PayPal chart. But these are all names, to kind of take a view on, and so this is interesting, right? The last time it really got crushed for 2 days. So you do have some support here. It's definitely on my radar. I did not put anything on in this one today. Just a few other names that were on my radar for the day. The software space, which really got beaten up yesterday. Some names really came back pretty nicely, depending on the name. Look at Hubs. This one was up 5.6% today, and that's in the application software name. There's a bunch of price target raises on this one. I think they spoke at a conference yesterday. We talked about this one pre-market, but I just did not get a chance to put this one on. What a power move that one is. This was a name that I played for earnings yesterday, which I didn't really understand why it was selling off. Recovered quite nicely. It was up 2%. I was able to take some profit on this one, but I didn't really understand. Maybe there was some bad sentiment in the name. And then I know a couple other areas that I was looking at. The industrials and the defense names. So you got a nice breakout here in ITA. That's a 52-week high. That's a ETF that I've talked about before. Boeing, I did not see where it closed, but it's starting to look interesting. You can see I've got a trend line drawn there. It kind of got away from me very early when I was managing a lot of my trades in the first half hour. Shot up pretty quickly, but this group. Huntsman saw some calls, name that's down 2.9%, but the industrial space is kind of, I think it had a second day of strength. I'll go through a couple other names. Caterpillar was up 70 basis points. Honeywell had a nice day yesterday, has another nice day. So again, names that are a little bit off, I think for the most part, people's radar, just in different sectors. And again, that's what I try to do is just find where they're rotating into. So, the diamonds actually finished up on the day, right? It just seems like they're rotating out of tech. So again, I don't think this should be all scary to you when you see some of these names like Facebook go down a lot. It's just sometimes people, rotate out of some names. That happens a lot in September, by the way. A rotation out of some names and into others. So I think I already talked about Facebook. There was some January 270 calls versus open interest. I'll have to check that for tomorrow. All right, so that's it for today's recap. Thanks very much for watching it, and have a great evening.